They say every kingdom has its secrets, but few could ever imagine just how many shadows linger behind the shining walls of Buckingham Palace. Hidden passages, secret alliances, scandals buried in silence, and truths that never reach the newspapers. These are not the fairy tale stories told to the public, but the whispers of history that the royal family would rather you never knew. Tonight, we begin to uncover them. And before we step into this world of mysteries, secrets, and forbidden truths, don't forget to subscribe to History One. Your support helps us keep bringing you the stories that history tried to hide. It begins with an unassuming detail, a letter sealed in wax, hidden in the drawer of a Victorian desk. A servant, sworn to silence, tucked it away, fearing that if its contents were ever revealed, the monarchy itself might tremble. The British monarchy, the world's most famous dynasty, has endured centuries of change, wars, revolutions, and scandals, yet always managed to maintain an image of unity and dignity. But behind this carefully curated image lies another story, one of secrets, betrayals, and hidden truths that have shaped the destiny of Britain itself. The first secret is older than most would expect, reaching back to the Tudor era. Henry VIII is remembered as the king with 6 wives, a man driven by passion, faith, and power. But what most do not know is that within the Tower of London exists a sealed chamber, one that even today is not open to the public. It is whispered that inside lie the records of an illegitimate line, children born not of Catherine, Anne, or Jane, but of mistresses never written into official chronicles. Some historians hint that certain noble families who rose suddenly to prominence in the Elizabethan age may not have been mere favorites, but blood relatives hidden in plain sight. Fast forward centuries, and the tradition of secrecy continued. During the reign of Queen Victoria, the royal archives swelled with letters and documents so controversial they were locked away for 100 years. Some of these, when released, revealed her deep and personal connection with John Brown, a Scottish servant. But even that story, now famous, may only be the surface of something darker. There were claims that a secret marriage took place, illegal under the laws of succession, and therefore erased from all official records. If true, it would mean that much of the line that followed carried a shadow of illegitimacy, something so dangerous that every trace had to be hidden at all costs. And then, in the 20th century, came the story of Edward VIII, the king who gave up his crown for love. At least, that is what the world was told. Yet whispers from the intelligence files suggest something far more sinister. Edward, enthralled not only by Wallis Simpson, but also by dangerous political sympathies, might have jeopardized Britain's survival had he remained king. Wallis herself, glamorous yet enigmatic, was rumored to have been more than a socialite. Some claimed she carried secrets across borders, messages hidden in jewelry boxes and letters. The abdication, then, was not merely a romantic tragedy, but perhaps a carefully orchestrated cover to prevent treason at the highest level. But the crown's most carefully guarded mysteries do not end with kings and queens. They also involve hidden illnesses, concealed deaths, and heirs who never saw the light of recognition. The walls of Sandringham and Balmoral have heard screams of despair and whispers of forbidden liaisons. In the archives of Windsor Castle are files sealed until 2070, their contents unknown to the public. What truths are so dangerous that they cannot yet be told? One such truth might involve the question of lineage itself. For centuries, rumors have persisted that certain royal children were not the offspring of kings, but of trusted advisors, guards, or lovers in the shadows. From the Tudor courts to the House of Windsor, there are gaps in the official records, dates that do not quite align, and portraits that reveal striking resemblances not to kings, but to men of lower birth. These secrets, if fully revealed, could change the very history of Britain's royal bloodline. And so, dear listener, as we step further into these mysteries, prepare to discover what they didn't want you to know about the British royal family. This is not the story you find in glossy magazines or tourist brochures. This is the story of shadows, locked doors, and truths buried so deep that even today, the monarchy works tirelessly to keep them hidden. The deeper we go into these shadows, the more unsettling the stories become. Imagine for a moment the grand halls of Windsor Castle, where portraits of ancestors line the walls, each face staring out with regal authority. Yet behind those painted eyes lie tales that could unravel the very image of royal purity. One such tale begins not with a king, but with a queen, the indomitable Elizabeth II. Known as the Virgin Queen, her reign was celebrated as one of unmatched power and independence. But was she truly untouched by love? Whispers among her closest courtiers suggested otherwise. Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester, was far more than just a trusted advisor. Their relationship, hidden from public eyes, was said to have crossed boundaries that could never be admitted. The death of Dudley's wife, Amy Robsart, found broken at the bottom of a staircase, only deepened the suspicion. Officially ruled an accident, her demise removed the final obstacle between Elizabeth and Dudley. Yet marriage never came, not because there was no passion, but because acknowledging such a union might have sparked scandal, rebellion, or even civil war. To this day, some claim there were children born in secret, children hidden among the nobility, their existence erased from the record, but their blood carried forward in silence. Centuries later, the idea of hidden heirs would emerge again, this time in the reign of George III. Known as the Mad King, George was plagued by an illness that clouded his mind and shook the empire. But what most do not know is that his illness was not the only secret the court worked tirelessly to hide. There are letters still locked away, suggesting that during his early reign, George fathered a child with a woman of common birth. If true, this child would have had no claim to the throne, yet could have altered the very landscape of succession had the truth surfaced. Instead, the story was buried, the mother disappeared, and the child absorbed quietly into obscurity. Royal secrecy did not always protect dignity. It often concealed scandal. Consider the reign of Queen Victoria once more. Her sprawling family, known as the Grandmother of Europe, spread across courts from Russia to Germany. Yet within her own household, not all was as pristine as it appeared. Several of her descendants suffered from hemophilia, a deadly genetic disorder. Official accounts described it as an unfortunate accident of inheritance. But behind palace doors, there were fears it had been introduced through relationships not entirely legitimate. The disorder spread across royal houses, toppling alliances and creating vulnerabilities that shaped the politics of an entire continent. Was it simply a cruel twist of fate, or a reminder that royal blood was not always as pure as the public was led to believe? And then comes the tale of hidden madness. In the Victorian era, when mental illness was a taboo subject, Members of the royal family who did not fit the image of dignity were quietly locked away. 2 of Queen Victoria's granddaughters were institutionalized, erased from the public eye as if they had never existed. Official documents recorded their deaths decades before they actually passed away, as though the very idea of imperfection had to be scrubbed from the family line. For a dynasty built on appearances, truth was often the most dangerous enemy of all. As the centuries marched forward, the royal archives became more tightly sealed. When Edward VIII abdicated, not every file was released to the public. Some were locked away for 50, even 100 years. Why? Because the true extent of his sympathies with Nazi Germany may have gone far beyond what was revealed. Intelligence reports hinted that he had shared military secrets, that he had offered suggestions to German officials, even that his abdication was less a personal choice than a forced exile dressed up as romance. Wallis Simpson herself was said to have carried coded messages, a pawn in a much larger game. And yet, the crown survived. Because in the monarchy, survival has always been less about truth and more about control. Secrets were currency, and silence was the most powerful weapon of all. So, as we peel back these layers, remember, every golden crown casts a shadow, and it is within those shadows that the real story of the British royal family begins to emerge, a story they never wanted you to know. If the public were ever to know the full truth, the image of the royal family might collapse like a house of cards. Consider the Georgian period again, when secret affairs flourished behind closed doors. King George IV, known for his extravagance, harbored a secret that shook the very laws of succession. Before his official marriage to Caroline of Brunswick, George is said to have entered into a clandestine marriage with Maria Fitzherbert, a Roman Catholic widow. The union, if legally binding, would have rendered him ineligible for the throne under the Act of Settlement of 1701. For that reason, the affair was denied, concealed, and wrapped in lies. Yet letters between George and Maria survive, dripping with passion and desperation. The truth of whether they were truly wed remains unresolved, deliberately buried beneath the weight of royal necessity. The secrecy surrounding George Thor pales, however, beside the chilling rumors that trailed his brother, William IV. Known as the Sailor King, William fathered at least 10 illegitimate children with the actress Dorothea Jordan. While history acknowledges them as the Fitzclarence line, whispers suggest that more children, hidden from the spotlight, may have been scattered across Britain. Some historians argue that certain noble houses which mysteriously gained influence in the early 19th century did so not by merit, but by blood, the unspoken recognition of ties to the crown. But what of those whose stories never made it to the public at all? The reign of Queen Victoria, so often idealized, contained shadows darker than most imagine. In 1900, the Times of London published a small note on the death of Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence. Officially, he succumbed to pneumonia. Yet rumors swirled that Albert Victor, known as Eddie, was entangled in scandals so severe they could never be made public. His name was linked to the Cleveland Street scandal, a male brothel uncovered by police. More sensational still are theories that he was connected in some way to the Jack the Ripper murders. Though evidence remains circumstantial, the fact that so many official files from that era were destroyed or sealed indefinitely has only deepened suspicion. Was Eddie's death truly natural? Or was it a carefully staged event to silence a prince who threatened the crown's reputation? Royal secrets were not always about passion or scandal. Sometimes they were about power. In the archives of Buckingham Palace are records of letters exchanged between Edward VII and European monarchs before the First World War. Some of these letters hinted at negotiations that would have seemed treasonous to the British people, discussions of alliances, personal debts, and even the sharing of military intelligence. Historians who have glimpsed fragments of these documents suggest that Edward VII was not only a king, but also a political manipulator, ensuring that Britain's interests were tied directly to his personal relationships across the continent. The war that eventually followed may have been shaped as much by royal correspondence as by parliaments and generals. Moving forward into the 20th century, the secrecy only intensified. King George VI, the father of Elizabeth II, was presented to the public as a reluctant yet noble monarch who led Britain with dignity during the Second World War. Yet few knew of his desperate struggles behind palace doors. He battled a severe stammer, a condition hidden as much as possible from the public. But even more hidden was his reliance on treatments considered radical, even dangerous for the time. Sessions of hypnosis, experimental breathing exercises, and emotional confessions that, if revealed, would have shocked a nation clinging to him as a symbol of stability. And then, of course, there are the stories surrounding Queen Elizabeth II herself. Her reign was the longest in British history, and her image carefully controlled. But within her reign, there were events deliberately cloaked in silence. The most striking example, the lost cousins of the royal family. Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, nieces of the Queen Mother, were born with severe learning disabilities. Instead of being acknowledged, they were declared dead in official genealogies while still alive, locked away in a mental institution for decades. Their existence only came to light much later, shattering the illusion of a family that claimed to be above such cruelties. What becomes clear is that for the royal family, truth has never been the priority. Image has, and maintaining that image required silencing voices, altering records, and burying history itself. The question that lingers then is this: if these are the secrets we already know, what deeper truths still lie hidden in the sealed archives, waiting for the year when they can finally be revealed? Every sealed archive has a ticking clock, and the British royal family knows this better than anyone. They have always calculated which truths can be hidden for decades and which must be erased forever. As we move closer to modern times, the balance between secrecy and revelation becomes even more delicate, for the monarchy is now under the gaze of global media, where every whisper can become a headline. Yet, even in this era, there are stories that never fully reached the light. Take, for example, the tragedy of Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth II's younger sister. To the public, Margaret was the glamorous rebel of the family, drawn to a life of indulgence and romance. But her heartbreak over Group Captain Peter Townsend, a divorced man she was forbidden to marry, reveals more than just a love story denied. It exposes the invisible chains of monarchy itself. Behind the scenes, powerful clerics, politicians, and even her own family pressured her into abandoning him, not because she did not love him, but because the church and the state feared scandal. The official narrative claimed it was her choice. In truth, it was no choice at all, but the cold enforcement of a system where personal happiness could never outweigh royal duty. Yet Margaret's story is far from the darkest. In the 1970s and 1980s, whispers began circulating about Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India and mentor to both Prince Charles and Prince Philip. Publicly, he was a decorated war hero and statesman. Privately, allegations swirled of inappropriate relationships, with files in the Irish National Archives hinting at disturbing accusations. Though never proven in court, and deliberately buried by institutions eager to protect the monarchy's image, the rumors lingered, unresolved. When Mountbatten was assassinated by the IRA in 1979, the explosion silenced not just a statesman, but possibly a trail of stories too dangerous to confront. Then there is the story of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, the fairy tale turned tragedy. What the world saw was a grand wedding, hailed as the stuff of dreams. What they didn't see were the fractures already forming. Diana herself, in secret tapes later revealed, admitted she was deceived, manipulated, and emotionally neglected. She spoke of her bulimia, her loneliness, her awareness that her husband's heart belonged elsewhere, to Camilla Parker Bowles. These were truths the monarchy fought to suppress, painting Diana instead as unstable, dramatic, and fragile. But when she died in that Paris tunnel in 1997, suspicion exploded. Was it truly an accident? Or was it the consequence of forces that decided she had become too powerful a voice, too much of a threat to the carefully maintained royal image? The official inquiries claimed it was tragic chance, yet many remain unconvinced, believing that secrets surrounding her death were sealed as tightly as those surrounding her life. Even more unsettling are the links between the royal family and some of the most notorious scandals of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Prince Andrew's connection to Jeffrey Epstein, for example, stands as one of the most damaging revelations in modern royal history. The carefully cultivated denials, the disastrous interview where Andrew claimed he couldn't sweat, the settlements paid quietly, all of it speaks to a family still playing the ancient game of concealment. The monarchy's survival demanded silence, yet the internet age has made silence impossible. Still, the pattern persists. Truths are hidden until the players are gone, the files sealed for decades. Somewhere in the archives, locked away from prying eyes, are documents that may yet reveal more about Diana's final days, Edward VIII's Nazi sympathies, or even the secret affairs of Elizabeth I. And when they are finally opened, they may not simply rewrite history. They may force Britain to confront questions it has avoided for centuries. Because what they didn't want you to know about the British royal family is not just scandal or romance or betrayal. It is that the monarchy itself is built on secrets, secrets that, if ever fully revealed, might bring the entire edifice crashing down. The very survival of the monarchy has depended on this delicate dance, giving the public just enough spectacle to inspire awe, while burying anything that might breed contempt. But sometimes, the truth has a way of seeping through the cracks, no matter how tightly the doors of the archives are shut. Consider the story of Edward VII before he became king. As the Prince of Wales, he was infamous for his affairs, moving through the bedrooms of Europe with reckless abandon. To the public, he was the charming playboy prince. Behind palace doors, his escapades caused crisis after crisis. Several of his mistresses were married women of influence, creating the constant threat of political scandal. The most dangerous of these entanglements nearly sparked a government collapse when one affair coincided with a legal case that dragged Edward's name into the courtroom. It was covered up with bribes, threats, and outright censorship in the press. The monarchy, desperate to shield him, went to extraordinary lengths to ensure his reputation, if not his virtue, remained intact. But the concealment of personal failings was not limited to kings. In the mid-20th century, hidden within the quiet corridors of Kensington Palace, was another secret: the cousins who vanished. Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, daughters of the Queen Mother's brother, were born with severe disabilities. Officially, they were recorded as dead in Burke's peerage, the genealogical record of Britain's aristocracy. In reality, they were alive, confined to a hospital, abandoned and forgotten. For decades, no one spoke of them. The official lie persisted until a newspaper uncovered it in the 1980s, shocking a public that had been told the royal family represented duty, loyalty, and care. The discovery left a bitter question hanging in the air. If they could erase their own blood from history, what else could they erase? Even more unsettling are the rumors surrounding wartime alliances. During the Second World War, King George VI was upheld as the stalwart symbol of resistance against Hitler. Yet within the same family, his brother, the abdicated Edward VIII, was secretly dining with Nazi officials, even visiting Hitler in 1937. Declassified files show that Germany had plans to reinstall Edward as king if they invaded Britain. What remains sealed in certain intelligence archives is the full extent of Edward's communication with Nazi Germany during the war. Some historians argue that his abdication was less about romance and more about survival, the only way to quietly remove a man whose sympathies posed a dire threat to Britain's survival. The monarchy has always survived by controlling narrative, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the case of Princess Diana. Her life, from marriage to death, was a collision of secrecy and exposure. She became the people's princess, a figure loved by millions, and in doing so, she threatened the monarchy's own relevance. Behind palace walls, her struggles with bulimia, her isolation, her cries for help, were all hidden from the public eye until she herself spoke out. When her taped interviews were released, revealing her famous words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." The monarchy's carefully built facade cracked. After her death, conspiracy theories thrived because secrecy breeds suspicion. Files remained sealed, witness statements redacted, CCTV footage mysteriously missing. Was it an accident, or was Diana silenced for being too powerful, too uncontrolled, too loved? The truth, perhaps, lies locked away, waiting for a day when the monarchy believes it safe to reveal. And then we arrive in the present day, where Prince Andrew's scandal has cast a shadow darker than any in recent memory. His association with Jeffrey Epstein was not simply a matter of poor judgment. It raised questions about the very circles of influence in which members of the royal family still move. For centuries, their secrets could be contained by loyalty, censorship, and the passage of time. But in the digital age, where every photograph, every flight log, every whisper can be made public, the monarchy faces a new kind of danger, yet the pattern remains. Denial, silence, settlements, modern tools for the same ancient game of concealment. The royal family has always lived in 2 worlds, the gilded fantasy shown to the public and the shadowed reality hidden behind the palace gates. And so, As we follow the trail of secrets from Elizabeth I to Elizabeth II, from Henry VIII to Charles III, one truth becomes undeniable. What they didn't want you to know about the British royal family is not one scandal or one secret, but an entire history of control, deception, and hidden truths that stretch across the centuries. The monarchy's survival has always rested on its ability to rewrite its own story. Time and again, uncomfortable truths were buried beneath layers of ceremony, ritual, and carefully managed appearances. But what if we look more closely at the moments when the mask slipped, moments when the shadows briefly bled into public view? Take the Georgian era once more, where extravagance clashed with duty. George IV's lavish lifestyle was no secret, but what few dared to mention was the trail of debts and bribes that followed him. He owed millions, an unthinkable sum in his day, and much of it was quietly absorbed by the British taxpayer. To prevent scandal, Parliament sealed certain financial records, ensuring the full extent of his indulgence would never be revealed. Rumor had it that some of these debts were not gambling losses at all, but hush money, paid to silence those who knew of affairs, illegitimate children, or secret dealings too explosive to withstand public scrutiny. This culture of secrecy was not limited to finances. In the Edwardian period, as Britain entered the modern age, whispers circulated about the monarchy's ties to shadowy networks of power. Edward VII, charming and worldly, had extensive connections across Europe. Behind his diplomacy, however, were personal dealings that blurred the line between statecraft and private interest. Some letters hinted at quiet agreements with financiers and aristocrats whose influence rivaled that of elected governments. The royal archives still contain correspondence sealed from public view, perhaps because revealing them would expose just how much the throne depended on alliances made in smoke-filled rooms rather than parliamentary halls. Moving into the 20th century, the House of Windsor presented itself as the very symbol of stability. But even then, hidden truths festered. Consider the case of the Queen Mother's brother-in-law, Prince George, Duke of Kent. Officially, he died in a mysterious plane crash in 1942. The public was told little more than that it was a tragic accident during wartime. But rumors suggested the crash involved circumstances far more troubling, ranging from secret missions to dangerous liaisons. Some whispered of connections to espionage, others of scandals that could have shattered the monarchy if proven true. To this day, the full files on his death remain restricted, a silence that speaks louder than any explanation. The post-war period brought new challenges, and with them, new secrets. The young Elizabeth II took the throne in 1952, projecting an image of constancy. Yet within her reign, there were cracks carefully concealed from the public eye. The Profumo affair in 1963 rocked the British government, but whispers suggested that the scandal stretched closer to the royal household than was ever admitted. Certain figures with connections to the palace were quietly removed from public life, their names scrubbed from newspapers, their ties erased. The monarchy survived once again, not by denying the existence of scandal, but by ensuring that its proximity to the crown was never proven. Perhaps the most haunting truth of all is how secrecy itself became an inheritance, passed down from monarch to monarch like a crown. Each generation added new layers of silence to protect the dynasty from collapse. But secrecy is never without cost. Behind the polished smiles, countless lives were reshaped, destroyed, or forgotten for the sake of an image. The cousins erased from family trees, the lovers cast aside, the heirs who never saw recognition. All are ghosts that haunt the lineage of Britain's most powerful family. And here lies the paradox. The monarchy survives precisely because it hides. Yet the more it hides, the more it invites suspicion. Every locked file, every redacted page, every unexplained death fuels the belief that there is more beneath the surface. Perhaps that is the greatest secret of all, that the monarchy is less a beacon of truth and tradition than a masterwork of illusion, built on centuries of carefully crafted lies. Illusion has always been the monarchy's greatest armor. Ceremonies, crowns, and pageantry are not merely traditions, they are smokescreens. They dazzle the eye so that the mind does not ask too many questions. Yet when you strip away the gold and velvet, what remains are people, flawed, desperate, and bound by the same human weaknesses as any commoner. It is in those cracks of humanity that the darkest secrets hide. One of the most persistent shadows clings to the late 19th century. Prince Albert Victor, Eddie, whose early death was explained away as pneumonia, continues to stir speculation. Beyond the Cleveland Street scandal, his name was whispered in connection to Jack the Ripper. While most historians dismiss this theory, the fact remains that crucial police files from that period vanished or were sealed. Witness statements disappeared, and potential links to high society were buried. Why would officials go to such lengths unless there was something or someone they needed to protect? The silence surrounding Eddie's death only deepened suspicions that he was not the innocent victim history remembers, but a liability who had to be removed. The pattern repeats itself in the 20th century with King Edward VIII. His romance with Wallis Simpson is celebrated as a grand love story, but declassified files hint at a darker reality. Meetings with Nazi officials, secret communications, and intelligence reports painted a picture of a man whose loyalties were questionable at best. Wallis herself was suspected of passing information, whether knowingly or not, to German contacts. Yet rather than expose him as a traitor, the monarchy orchestrated a graceful abdication. The story was rewritten as a tale of romance, shielding Britain from the scandal of a king who may have stood on the wrong side of history. The late 20th century brought Diana, Princess of Wales, the most beloved royal of modern times, and perhaps the most dangerous to the institution. Her openness, her willingness to speak of pain and betrayal, shattered the carefully curated silence. She exposed bulimia, loneliness, and infidelity, humanizing the monarchy in ways it had fought for centuries to avoid. And then, in 1997, she was gone. Official reports blamed reckless driving, but questions still echo. Why were certain cameras not working that night? Why did crucial minutes pass before emergency services arrived? Why were files sealed? For some, her death will always remain the most haunting secret of all. Proof that when a royal voice becomes too powerful, fate has a way of intervening. But even Diana's story is not the last. In recent years, Prince Andrew has become the living embodiment of scandal. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein are not merely whispers, they are documented, undeniable, and damning. The monarchy's response has been familiar: deny, delay, and attempt to bury the truth beneath silence. Yet in the age of the internet, the old methods no longer work. Every photograph, every testimony, every leaked file erodes the wall of secrecy. Andrew's downfall shows that the monarchy's greatest defense, its ability to hide, may no longer be possible. And now, as King Charles III takes the throne, the question grows heavier. How many more secrets are locked away, waiting for their time to surface? The archives of Windsor hold documents sealed until 2070, their contents unknown. Will they reveal more affairs, more illegitimate heirs, more dangerous sympathies? Or will they confirm what some already suspect, that the royal family's history is not one of unbroken dignity, but of carefully managed deception? What they didn't want you to know about the British royal family is not simply scandalous. It is structural. The very foundation of the monarchy rests on secrets. Without them, the golden image would shatter, and the crown itself might lose its magic. The truth is this: the British monarchy has endured not because it is flawless, but because it has mastered the art of concealment. Every king and queen has worn not just a crown, but a mask. And behind that mask lies a story Britain is still not ready to hear. The mask, however, grows heavier with each generation. It is no longer enough to hide scandals in dusty archives or to silence servants with oaths of secrecy. In today's world, secrets leak faster than ever before, and the monarchy finds itself fighting battles on new fronts: tabloids, paparazzi, and social media, where rumors spread in minutes. But this struggle against exposure is nothing new. It is merely the latest chapter in a long history of concealment. Consider the hidden illnesses of kings and queens. Monarchs were expected to embody strength, yet many battled conditions carefully disguised from the public. George III's mental collapse was blamed on porphyria, but some accounts suggest arsenic poisoning, either accidental or deliberate. His violent fits and incoherent ramblings threatened the stability of the crown, and so his condition was shrouded in mystery for years. Official bulletins assured the nation of his recovery, while behind palace doors, he was strapped into chairs, restrained, and silenced. Later, George VI's failing health was concealed until the very end. The public was told their king was strong, even as surgeons secretly removed parts of his lung ravaged by cancer. The news was withheld for fear of weakening national morale. Even his death in 1952 was managed with precision. The announcement delayed until the timing could suit the image of continuity. What the public saw was a dignified passing. What they did not see was the desperate effort to hide weakness in the man who symbolized the nation's strength. And then there is the matter of illegitimate heirs. Throughout history, whispers have persisted that royal blood flows in unexpected veins. From the supposed children of Elizabeth I and Robert Dudley, to the rumored descendants of George IV's clandestine marriage to Maria Fitzherbert, these hidden branches of the family tree challenge the very idea of legitimacy. Some families that rose to prominence with startling speed were suspected of carrying unspoken royal blood. Others, whose resemblance to monarchs was too striking to ignore, were quietly granted lands or titles. None were officially acknowledged, yet their existence was an open secret among those who served closest to the throne. Scandals, too, were buried by force. The Profumo affair shook the British establishment in the 1960s, but whispers of its proximity to the crown were swiftly silenced. The media was discouraged from asking questions, and files were sealed. When Princess Margaret's private life came under scrutiny, photographs and stories were suppressed before they reached the press. In every instance, the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to erase inconvenient truths before they reached the public. But what happens when secrets cannot be erased? Princess Diana proved that silence is not always possible. Her interviews, her tapes, her raw honesty exposed cracks the monarchy could not repair. She revealed not just her own suffering, but the cold machinery of an institution designed to protect itself above all else. Her story broke the spell, reminding the world that the royals were not fairy tale figures, but flawed humans caught in a gilded cage. And now, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have carried that legacy forward, lifting the veil in interviews watched by millions. They spoke of racism, isolation, and the crushing weight of tradition. For the first time, the monarchy faced exposure not from whispers or speculation, but from its own members. The age-old methods of control, denial, silence, suppression, could not contain it. Still, the crown endures, because even as secrets surface, new ones remain buried. The archives of Windsor and Balmoral hold files sealed for decades, their contents untouchable until long after today's generation is gone. What lies within them? Correspondence with dictators, hidden medical records, proof of illegitimate heirs, or stories so damaging that they could unmake the monarchy itself? One day, those boxes will be opened, and when they are, Britain may finally see the monarchy for what it has always been. Not just a family bound by blood, but a dynasty built on silence, secrecy, and shadows. The shadows of the monarchy are long, stretching across centuries, shaping not just the royal family, but the destiny of the entire nation. Each time we draw closer to the truth, we find another veil, another locked box, another carefully crafted narrative. But what happens when those veils are finally torn away? Let us return to one of the darkest intersections between monarchy and state, the Second World War. Edward VIII's abdication was portrayed as a romantic tragedy, but intelligence files paint a darker portrait. The Germans saw him as a potential ally, a king who could be reinstated if Britain fell. Operation Willy, a Nazi plan to kidnap Edward and Wallace, was more than fantasy. It was grounded in reports of Edward's sympathies. After the war, many documents were destroyed or hidden, but what remains shows conversations that should never have taken place. The monarchy chose to shield him, rewriting the story as one of love conquering duty. Yet beneath it was something far more dangerous, the specter of treason at the very heart of the crown. The pattern of rewriting continued in the late 20th century. When Diana entered the royal family, the monarchy was already fragile. Her presence revived it, bringing glamour and adoration, but it also exposed deep fractures. Her confessions of betrayal and loneliness were not just personal. They were revelations of an institution unable to adapt to modern humanity. When she died, questions about security, surveillance, and missing evidence lingered. Many accept the official verdict of a tragic accident. Others believe her death marked the moment when the monarchy's secrets became too heavy to contain, leading to an ending written in silence rather than truth. And yet, even Diana's story is not the final chapter. Prince Andrew's scandal has carved perhaps the deepest wound in modern times. Unlike earlier generations, the monarchy cannot simply bury his associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Court documents, photographs, and testimonies exist beyond their control. His disastrous interview with the BBC revealed not just his own arrogance, but the monarchy's desperation to contain a firestorm it could no longer manage. Stripped of royal duties, Andrew remains a symbol of how quickly the old tools of concealment fail in a world where nothing stays hidden. But let us not forget, the monarchy's secrets are not confined to individuals. They are systemic. They involve finances, where billions in royal wealth remain shielded from public scrutiny, hidden behind complex trusts and exemptions from transparency laws. They involve politics, where letters written by Prince Charles to ministers, dubbed the Black Spider Memos, revealed attempts to influence government policy, even as the crown claimed political neutrality. These were supposed to remain hidden. Only court battles forced some into the light. What else, we must wonder, lies in those sealed vaults of communication between monarch and ministers? Even the rituals themselves hide secrets. The coronation, cloaked in ancient symbolism, is a spectacle designed to project divine legitimacy. Yet hidden within it is a reminder of fragility. Oaths sworn not just to God, but to uphold laws that monarchs themselves have sometimes bent or broken. The pomp conceals the truth, that the monarchy has survived not through divine grace, but through relentless control of its own story. And so, we are left with this paradox. The monarchy appears eternal, yet its history is riddled with erasures, lies, and shadows. What they didn't want you to know is that its survival has never depended on purity or truth or divine right. It has depended on secrecy. Every crown is heavy, not because of gold, but because of the weight of what must never be spoken. The British royal family has worn that weight for 1,000 years, and as long as they endure, so too will the shadows that follow them. The longer one studies the monarchy, the more it becomes clear that secrecy is not an exception. It is the rule. It was secrecy that shielded Elizabeth III from accusations of illegitimacy, secrecy that hid George IV's unlawful marriage, secrecy that veiled Edward VIII's dangerous sympathies, and secrecy that still cloaks the mysteries of Diana's final hours. Each generation has carried its own locked chest of forbidden truths. One of the most chilling examples lies in the way the monarchy has handled bloodlines. Succession is supposed to be clear, unbroken, and unquestionable. Yet the family tree is riddled with doubts. Henry VIII's court was notorious for rumors of illegitimate offspring scattered across England. Centuries later, George III was suspected of fathering a child with Hannah Lightfoot, a Quaker woman. If true, this secret heir might have had a stronger claim to the throne than George's legitimate descendants. Such stories were denied, silenced, and buried, but they reveal how fragile the crown's claim to divine order truly was. Even in modern times, lineage has been clouded by doubt. Prince Albert Victor's sexuality and alleged double life were whispered about, but never openly acknowledged. Edward VIII's abdication raised questions about whether his line had truly ended with exile, or whether there were children hidden away to avoid scandal. These questions may never be fully answered, for the archives are designed to ensure that doubt outlives certainty. Beyond bloodlines, there are the secrets of death. Royal deaths have often been managed not as natural events, but as political moments. George VI's death was carefully timed and choreographed to avoid destabilizing the nation. Prince George, Duke of Kent, died in a plane crash that remains shrouded in suspicion. Even Prince Philip's passing in 2021 was wrapped in language that emphasized duty and dignity, while personal truths were kept behind palace walls. Death, like life, is stage managed to preserve the image of continuity. Then there is the crown's relationship with power. For centuries, monarchs claimed to stand above politics. Yet letters, diaries, and hidden communications suggest otherwise. Queen Victoria interfered in parliamentary affairs with a heavy hand, often using her influence behind the scenes. Edward VII was known to wield diplomacy as personal leverage. Even Elizabeth II, who cultivated the image of neutrality, maintained weekly audiences with prime ministers where the true nature of her influence remains undocumented. What was said in those meetings has never been recorded for the public. One wonders how many decisions that shaped Britain were not made in Parliament, but in private conversations with the sovereign. And what of the future? King Charles III has already inherited controversies surrounding his letters to government ministers, which revealed attempts to sway policy. Though courts forced some disclosures, many remain hidden. If history is any guide, the full extent of his involvement may not be known for decades, by which time the monarchy itself may look very different. The final, perhaps most unsettling truth is this: the monarchy has never truly belonged to the people. It has belonged to itself, to its survival, its secrecy, and its power to decide what the nation may know and what it must never hear. Every coronation, every jubilee, every balcony appearance is part of the performance. Behind the velvet curtains, behind the sealed doors of Windsor and Buckingham, the real story unfolds in silence. What they didn't want you to know about the British royal family is that history's greatest illusion has always been this: that the monarchy is eternal, pure, and untouchable. In truth, it is fragile, human, and held together by shadows. And when the final archives are opened, when the sealed boxes of correspondence, diaries, and intelligence reports are finally revealed, the crown may never look the same again.